Let's start with what you want people of Eugene to know about you and why you're deciding to run for mayor.
Yes, thank you again for this interview. And so, yeah, to talk about why I wanted to run for mayor, for me, it was me being involved in the community, really getting to know youth and getting to know families, and recognizing that there are many gaps that exist in the community, especially when it comes to addressing some essential needs for members of the community. And so through the work that I've done and been able to support in my time here, a lot of that was experienced with connecting people to organizations and programs for resources, even me being the conduit for some partnerships to create just some opportunities that were so needed for families, even being referrals for housing assistance, rental assistance, creating some opportunities in the workforce and even internships, just access. And that was really, my call to action. And so listening to people's stories, seeing the plight of the community, I felt that I am able to offer a fresh perspective to what governance needs to be, should look like, and to also be very vocal. I mean, that's what I'm known for, is being vocal about topics and definitely removing barriers to access. And so I know that I have what it takes to just create those bold, actionable steps to address so many complex issues that our community currently is facing. And so what I want people to know is that I'm an everyday Eugenian and that I have made this place my home. And by making it my home, I have served. And that's what I believe that public officials should be. They're here to serve. And so I wanted to just expand that service to the wider community and continue to expand upon partnerships, create some greater collaboration to really tackle the hard issues that people face. And so I know that I am the one to do that. I've done it and just want to be able to ensure that every voice is heard and that every resident is truly represented when we're making policies and ordinances that affect ultimately the people in our community.
And then what's the work that you've done in the past specifically?
Yeah, so my background generally is in education, and so I've been in education for over 17 years, which has also created just unique opportunities to connect with community. I've been one of those educators who's not confined to the four walls of a classroom, because when you're addressing the needs of not only youth, but you're also addressing the needs of their family, it takes going out in the community to bring in some resources. Education is not the most well-funded, sphere of our community and our society. And so it often takes the helping hands of other individuals to make things happen. I've served as a program coordinator for a program that was grant funded by the Department of Education, which actually allowed me to serve countywide. Had the opportunity to serve all 16 school districts. And so again, giving me a great wide knowledge of what the whole community looks like and the multifaceted needs of the community. I'm also a small business owner. I started my first business back in 2011, started another business in 2018. And so a lot of that just allowed me to become a public speaker, also to become a consultant, an advocate. And that's what that looks like. I've served on a few boards here, and the World Meets Games. I got to sit on that equity panel for the city of Eugene and hear from such a diverse array of voices in order to bring out the beauty of Eugene when we were bringing the whole world to our community. And so being able to be a part of what the world got to see that Eugene has to offer was amazing, and make sure that it was an event that was so inclusive and it was culturally reflective of our current community. I also sit on the education committee for the Jordan Central Museum of Arts. I am a lover of arts. I know that's part of our city's motto, and so I'm a big proponent of our arts and outdoor scenery that we have here. I also was part of the United Way Racial Justice Fund and ensuring how that funding went to serve many underfunded organizations, and even helped to establish new organizations that were going to address some of the cultural needs that were lacking in our community. And so being able to be a part of what's new, what's innovative, what's necessary has been part of my story here in Eugene.
Awesome. So if you're elected mayor, what would be your #1 priority?
I think that's a question that I've often asked, and even as I've gone into interviews and talked to individuals, I often ask them, what do you want my first 90 days to look like? What is priority for you? And to be honest, that question looks different for everyone. Everyone has a need. What I've shared and I've said before, I think it is priority to address the essential needs in our community, but in order to do that, it requires having those conversations with the people who are required to do the work. And so for me, the first, going into office, it is going to be meeting with the city employees and meeting with supervisors and department managers, having the conversation with our city manager, and we have 2 assistant city managers as of now, and really having a hard look at what are we offering, what are the gaps, what are the needs, and how can we best serve, and also ensuring that our city employees, the ones who are really tasked with the day-to-day running of our community, ensuring that their needs are being met as well, and how can we better help them do the work that is so needed. And so definitely in terms of priority, it's hard to say one thing will be prioritized because I think everything is connected. For me, it is important that, we hit the ground running with affordable housing and creating access to greater housing, more housing options all across the board, regardless of socioeconomic status or regardless of where you live. I also look at public health. We know that we're missing an essential service of an emergency room, and looking at how are we providing those services for substance abuse disorder and a mental health crisis that we're facing. We're still having the talks about environmental justice and what does that look like for our community to meet our 2030 goals. And so to me, all of those things are interconnected. So I can't say there's one thing. I think they're all work together because it's going to take addressing all of them in order to tackle each one.
Considering the challenges of the homelessness crisis in Eugene, what changes would you prioritize to address those issues specifically?
So again, I would say I want to start internally. I want to make sure that there aren't ordinances or rules or policies that we as a city has put in place that has limited our ability to adequately address the unhoused population, our most vulnerable members of our community, making sure that we're not the barrier to access and we're not the barrier for many of our organizations who are in fact providing, shelters and temporary housing locations, that they have what they need to be able to expand their services and to expand their reach, and that we're working alongside them, but that we're not a barrier to them in order to do that work. I think that's important to me. I think, again, it's looking at when we're having conversations, who's at the table. We're talking about housing and we have boards and we have commissions, which are great. It's a great way to get diverse voices into the room. But I also want to make sure that people with lived experience are also at that table to have that conversation. We're talking about our unhoused population. These are people, and they all have a story, they all have needs. And I think that we have to bring back the humanity and bringing about policies that deal with our human population. And so for me, that is going to be looking at, when I talk about, housing, and even we're talking about affordable housing, that looks at how are we maximizing our revenue in order to generate funding for our affordable housing trust, and are we utilizing our full capabilities to have maximized funding to do so, and what are we able to do as a city to come alongside with those organizations that are doing the necessary work of meeting the needs of our unhoused population and helping them with getting additional funding and supporting their funding network. And even with volunteers, I think about those Eugene warming centers, which are so necessary, but they are highly dependent on volunteers. And what are we doing as a city to help them increase their volunteer base? How are we ensuring that if me as mayor, I want to be a volunteer, I don't want just the community to feel like it's their need to address the issue. I want to be boots on the ground. I want to be helping serve, when our families and communities are facing hard times and crisis, that they also see me.
What can residents expect from a Mayor Joyce-Stringer when it comes to addressing public safety?
So for me, when I think about public safety, to me, it's again multifaceted. When I think about public safety, that is us addressing mental health. That is also us addressing substance abuse disorder, right? That's also addressing crime. And so one of those things I love to work with our police force and those who are part of securing our communities and our neighborhoods and our downtown and business areas. I love the idea of community policing. I would love to see that we have great relationships with those who are to protect and serve our community, and that's getting out the car and making sure that people know who are the individuals who are patrolling their neighborhoods, who are ensuring that they are safe when they're in a park or when they're at a restaurant, and that we're having that dialogue and that we're having that level of engagement. I also look at, when I think about mental health crisis, I am an advocate for therapy. I have definitely benefited from therapy, and a lot of that is removing that stigma that is often associated with mental health crisis or mental health disorders, which often, leads people not going to getting much needed help. But also, again, it's looking at the fact that, right, we need more peer specialists, we need more mental health clinicians, and so wanting to be a visual, vocal advocate for mental health services, and that we're utilizing funding that is coming down at the state level to provide those services, and that is reaching those who need it most and as quickly as possible. Same thing with substance abuse disorder. I appreciate those programs who provide, dual services, also housing while also providing, right, the clinician services that they need, the health essentials that they have need of. And so I want to ensure that we are partnering alongside with them and that we're ensuring that the majority of our population, our community, know what's needed, which is something that I found. A lot of people don't know what is out there or where to go, and sometimes there's just hardships because you got to go here for a health service, you got to go here for a housing service, and how do we serve as an incubator that there are spaces where it's all inclusive. In terms of crime, I think it's so important that we address that. A lot of the crime that we see is usually property crime, and I think that, again, that's kind of connected to unhoused individuals and people who are not doing it, to be vindictive or to be harmful, but sometimes for them it is often, for survival. And so if we're meeting that need of those who, have to feel that they have to resort to some criminal element, that we can reduce that by meeting their essential needs and to help create safer spaces for our community.
So turning to HB 4002 and the coming decriminalization of illicit drugs, do you have specific ideas about how to address the concerns of residents that are opposed and support the bill?
Yeah, so one of those things, I actually was at the state capitol the day that it went out of committee to move to the floor, and was with a group of folks, who had some angst about decriminalizing or recriminalizing, I should say, right, the use of illicit drugs. I think the first and most important thing, again, is transparency. I think that we need to be communicative with our community about what does this actually look like, because there's a lot of jargon that comes with, legal policies and ordinances that people don't necessarily understand. I think that we have to do a great job of enforcing what has now been, put to law, but in order to enforce it, people have to know, what does that look like? What does that look like for me as a business owner? What does that look like for me as a resident? What does this look like for me as a service provider? How does all of this impact me? And so I would want to have that conversation that invites the community, even if it's a town hall, a meeting, just to go line by line, precept by precept, to really understand what does this mean to our community and how does that impact us individually and how does that impact folks collectively. That also means bringing to the table our, state attorney office and public defenders. That's also bringing to the table law enforcement, who are usually the first to interface individuals. And so having that honest conversation, what does that look like at every stage of implementation? And, I definitely had some angst, I'll be honest, about what that new recriminalization looks like. We know that our public defenders are already overburdened. We knew that there was a need for additional funding for our jails if they were going to now house folks that you're going through substance abuse disorders. And so what does that look like? I think for me, a lot of it is having the conversation and the transparency of what actually does this new implementation means, what does it look like, and who does it impact and how, and to be honest about how are we going to navigate any of those changes that will be made, and to be honest about who will be mostly impacted by this new recriminalization through this measure that's been passed.
When it comes to the recriminalization of drugs that will be enacted in September, do you have an opinion on whether it is a return to the war on drugs? There's a lot of people that are opposing the bill, and that's kind of their main focus.
So what I would say is, right, in terms of that terminology, the war on drugs, and whether it was successful, I don't know if anyone has called it a success, and how does that play out for us here in Oregon, and specifically here in Eugene. What I would say to that is I care a lot about the impact of individuals. What does that mean to them if this law that is going to come into fruition, and if there are someone who is struggling with substance abuse disorder, that I want to ensure that we have created avenues and resources that they need in order to live a healthy life that they desire, and that we're doing so in a way that is not going to be even more of a hardship through fines, right, and through jail time and things of that nature, that we're not looking at it to be punitive. I do believe that substance abuse disorder is really a health issue more so than a criminal issue. There's definitely a criminal element, and I do believe that our law enforcement has been doing the work to remove drugs as best as they can, and the sale of drugs out of our community. And so I'm looking at the people who are impacted by this new measure that is being passed. And I just want to ensure that as a city that we're leading with compassion, and that we're doing what it takes to help them live a healthy life, and that they're not having any barriers to access to the services that they desire, that the services that they want. And so that will include that mental health piece that is going to look at health, right? How are we ensuring that they have access to basic health necessities? And that also may look at, again, housing and employment opportunities, doing all of the things to come alongside individuals who are suffering from a disorder, to ensure that they're not feeling punished, but that they know that they have a community that is going to support them on their journey to a healthier life.
How would you sell your or pitch your campaign in, a sentence or two?
So what I would say, so the motto of my campaign is moving Eugene forward together. And what that means is that we have very complex issues that are not new to our community, and we didn't just arrive here yesterday. But in order to tackle those issues, in order to mitigate those issues, it is going to require forward thinking and forward moving. And that means taking bold next steps in order to move us from stagnation or slow progress to actionable steps that people begin to see that they have the ability to thrive here in our community, and that I'm here to be a servant, and that I'm here to be a voice for everyone in our community, regardless of where you live in the city of Eugene. You should have access to all that you need, so that this place is not just home for now, that it's home in the future. And I really want to create a community that our youth can truly call home, and that they will have access to education, they will have access to jobs, and access to housing as they prepare for their future. And we're creating a future for the next generation here.
Okay. And then why do you think you're the best qualified candidate?
I believe that I am the best fit because I know that I offer a fresh perspective to governance. I know that I offer fresh ideas to many of the complex issues. I've had the ability and the experience here of bringing so many diverse voices to the table and ensuring that they are heard. I know there's a remnant of our community who feel that our government, our local governments haven't been hearing them or haven't been including them at the table, and I want to change that. I know that I'm unique in the fact that I'm a renter, which is highly not reflective in much of our city governance here. And so I also bring that perspective. I do believe in that if you're going to talk about an issue or you're going to focus on a topic, that you have all of the diverse voices that are needed at the table. And that is something that I've done in my time here, in my work here, and I'm glad for every table that I have been invited to, and I want to do the same, which I think has gone missing for a while here. There's so many voices that have felt they haven't been invited to the table, and a lot of that comes with offering great transparency and accountability. I'm a person of accountability. I want to be held accountable, and so I want to be transparent with those hard decisions that have to be made and be able to offer people truth about what can't be done or what can't be done yet, and give them all the whys. And so I'm excited to be the next mayor of this city and to be sure that I am reflective of the inclusivity of our community, to be reflective of all the diverse voices of all levels, of all ages in our community, and to be a conduit for change.